Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has moved forward with the technical process to get the ball rolling before a potential vote on the stimulus package on Monday. This is even as what exists now is just a skeleton outline of what they expect the different buckets of this aid to comprise. Remember, negotiations between Republicans and Democrats are still ongoing. The fine print of this still needs to be worked out. But the Senate Majority Leader wants to make clear that this is going to get done, and it's going to get done quickly. Here he is on the floor just moments ago.
Member-level discussion is going on as we speak. The goal is to reach agreements on each of the four components of the legislation by the end of the day. The Senate is here, we're working, and we're going to deliver.
There are still a few parts of this package that we are waiting to fill in. First, we're wondering what the final price tag of this is. The Treasury Department had outlined a $1 trillion-plus stimulus package, but Democrats are eyeing additional items that they want to be included in this package in order to secure their votes. And some of their proposals are in the realm of hundreds of billions of dollars in additional items. Also, conditions of aid. What are lawmakers going to demand of businesses in exchange for these loans or cash injections? And third, additional agency and business funding. The White House had requested close to $50 billion in additional agency funding earlier this week. That could go up. And then there's the whole host of businesses, Brian, that have been asking for aid that are not currently included in the bill as it stands. Remains to be seen whether they will get a piece of this massive package. It is likely, Brian, that there will be a vote on this bill before there is a score from the Congressional Budget Office, meaning that this is an estimate of exactly what they're earmarking, and it's really unclear, or it will be unclear, how many businesses could take advantage of it and what the final cost to the American taxpayer would be.
All right, Kayla, thank you very much. Why don't we try to clear up some of those hanging questions with a man who is on the front lines of these negotiations. Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey joining us now on the Newsline. Senator Toomey, thank you very much for joining us here on CNBC. You heard Kayla. Where do we stand right now? And do you have to wait for a CBO score to approve anything?
Brian, we don't actually have to wait for a CBO score to pass something. Obviously, we'd like to have as much information as possible about the total cost. But there is an urgency here. Several components of this, really virtually all of it, is urgent. Now, there's a lot to argue about how individual components are coming together. But I think it's likely that there will be a vote early next week.
Have a day in mind? Are we Monday, Tuesday?
The leader said it's going to be Monday, and he controls the schedule. So, we're under a lot of pressure, those of us who are on the negotiating team, to get this pulled together and get agreements ironed out by the end of the day today, legislative language developed to reflect that tomorrow, and a vote on Monday. That's the goal.
Listen, I understand there are going to be some sticking points. Kayla reported on them. But do you get any sense, Senator, that we are facing a national crisis? It doesn't matter what your political party is. Do you feel like there is some bipartisan action taking place, unprecedented in modern times, perhaps, in that room?
Well, I would say definitely. That's been my experience. So everybody acknowledges that this is a very, very dangerous circumstances, both obviously health-wise, but also very much so economically. To take my state in Pennsylvania, our governor shut down all non-essential business last night. And, there are exceptions to that, but that's a very, very drastic step. You saw what's happened in California, my goodness. So our economy is going to be a dramatic contraction in the economy. There are entire businesses that have zero revenue and are going to have zero revenue for some time to come, hopefully a short time, but some time. And so there has to be a response. And one of the things I'm focused on is making sure that we stand up a broad-based, large credit facility that will be available to stabilize markets. And we've seen the Fed step in and do that very effectively, I think, in several different financial markets over the last week or so, but also to provide liquidity to firms so that they can stay alive, pay their bills, hopefully retain their employees, and be there when we get on the other side of this. So that's one of the several large parts of this bill.
How did you come to the income level considerations? Okay, what we've got on NBC News is that people making up to $75,000 will be eligible. Families making up to $150,000 will be eligible for direct payments. But you know this. Here's where it gets sticky. In Western Pennsylvania, the 15th district where you are, there are car salesmen, software salesmen, people whose income is widely variable. And maybe last year they did well because the economy was booming. And now they're looking at maybe no paycheck for months. Why the income limits there when there's so much variance in so many different types of industries?
Well, when you're moving fast to respond to a crisis, it's not possible to have every possible contingency perfectly covered. That's one thing that's for sure. There is going to be a plus up in unemployment benefits. There is a liberalization of participation in unemployment. There's probably going to be direct payments paid to people who've paid taxes, which, by the way, that has a lot of problems with it, right? Most of those checks will go to people who don't actually need the money. And the history of these direct payments is that it really hasn't done much for economic growth. But be that as it may, I think that's going to be part of this package. And, the hope is that through the various components, people are able to get through this. And when we do come out the other side, people are reasonably current on their bills and they've got a job to go back to.
I want to ask about some market issues, Senator, if I may, which is there's been, a growing chorus, some chorus anyway, that because of what's going on and the hardships that people are facing trying to work from home remotely, et cetera, that we should either temporarily ban short selling or reinstitute what's called the uptick rule without getting wonky. Basically, you can only short a stock, bet it's going to fall when that stock is on the rise. Do you think either of those are appropriate?
So I am not a fan of limiting the ability of the market to find its level. It's painful to watch. It's painful to experience. There's no question there's been tremendous wealth destruction recently. I am hopeful that these markets can come back when the economy comes back. But if we start limiting trading or closing markets or constraining the ability to trade, then we start to introduce some artificiality in the markets. We don't have good price information. And I think we're in a worse place. So I'm in favor of letting the market function.
All right. On a different topic here, there's been some reports out there that Senators Richard Burr and Kelly Loeffler sold a bunch of their personal stocks, Senator, shortly after being briefed on maybe the extreme risks of the coronavirus. They can say they're blind trust. They could say they've got programs. Does the Senate need to take action or at least look deeper into both of those senators and their stock sales?
I don't know anything at all about the circumstances of those situations, so I have no idea whether they are a matter of concern. My understanding is, in at least one such case, the transactions in question have been turned over to the Ethics Committee. The Ethics Committee, this is what it exists for, to look at the actual circumstances, look at what happened, and determine whether or not there was any kind of ethical violation.
And finally, the issue of buybacks. Obviously, you've heard the president talk about it, that it sounds like the White House would be in favor of preventing companies from buying back their own stock if they take government aid. Would you be in favor of some kind of limitation on companies that take bailouts or aid, at least until that money is paid back?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The purpose here is not to provide a credit facility for companies to then tap into taxpayer-funded credit to buy back their stock. So for the duration, for a company that accesses these credit facilities that we're hopefully going to stand up soon, as long as that loan is outstanding, I think it's quite reasonable to say you can't buy back your stock with this money during that period of time. Now, once that money is paid back, then, hey, companies need to be free to do what makes sense for their shareholders, and that might well include stock buybacks. But for the duration of an outstanding loan or guarantee, as the case may be, under a program like this, I think it is reasonable to say you can't use this money to buy back stock.